Yeah, we're talking about all the fun things here around the attic, like the desk boom, and the ring light.
All important things for podcasting.
Yes. Yeah. So how's everything been going?
Good. Yeah, yourself?
Great.
Awesome.
Yeah. We're here with our friend Randy McStine. Super excited to have a little sit down.
Yeah, it's great to be
see how things
here.
are going, and talk about maybe some of your upcoming events.
Sure.
And maybe get to know a little bit more about each other here, right?
Yeah, because I feel like we've met a few times, but never had a chance to really sit down and talk. Because gigs aren't. I mean, it's great to go out and obviously support friends and see live music. Of course, we all do it. But in terms of just one-on-one, it's never the right atmosphere to actually. Because you want to see a lot of people and
it's loud.
Talk to people, and it's loud.
You want to see everybody. You want to set your stuff up, break it down.
Yeah, exactly.
Get in that mindset. It's tough, but at the same time, it's also like one of the best things getting to see everybody, getting to chat when you can.
It's great.
So I mean, one thing that I really wanted to learn is, when did you start playing music?
I started playing guitar when I was 5.
Okay.
I had shown an interest for a couple of years before that. I grew up around a lot of music and a lot of guitar-based music, and I had a lot of visual cues because my dad had a great collection of like live concert films. So it's like my earliest memories are seeing like Stevie Ray Vaughan on Austin City Limits and Eric Johnson and Gary Moore, guitar players like that. So. Yeah, I don't know how to describe it, but I used to just grab stuff around the house and pretend to strum it and that kind of thing.
It's fun.
And so my dad was friends with Benny Fiacco at Music City and came home. My parents, for my birthday, bought me a Fender Lead 2 guitar, which is a great
Yeah, I was going to say,
great
what a first guitar.
I know, yeah. So I messed around with it on my own for probably 8 or 9 months or something. I had a little amp and the guitar, and then started taking lessons over at the old music workshop on Washington Ave.
Who's giving you those lessons?
Endicott. My first guitar teacher was a guy named Tony Zampi. And it's a little blurry now, but I probably took lessons from him for about a year, and then he moved away, so I had to find a new teacher. And my dad hooked me up with Jim Wilding over at McNeil Music. And Jim was my teacher basically from like age 7 through high school, and most of pretty much weekly lessons, for 10 years.
Shoot. That's awesome.
Yeah.
Now, kind of like, I know I'm kind of getting stuck on the high school thing of.
Yeah, we can get there.
Of like bands, were you playing with anybody when you were you in school, or like starting any bands with some of your buddies?
Well, the thing is, my career path sort of had me bypassing all of that because I played for a few years. By the time I was like 9 or 10, it was obvious to people that there was something going on there. And my very first sort of public gig was at the St. Joe's Bazaar. We're going to have a very local conversation, which is great. The St. Joe's Bazaar. And yeah, I must have been about 9, I think. And Jim's band at the time was called Friends, and they were playing there. And I was invited to play a few songs with them. It was like Stevie Ray Vaughan, Pride and Joy, Tore Down, like the Clapton version, and probably one other song I can't recall, Red House, I think. And I could play leads. That's basically what I could do, is play bluesy lead guitar. I didn't even really know what key I was in, but I was just starting to explore the vocabulary. And it was in that moment, that 15 minutes or whatever it was, that the whole crowd sort of gathered around the stage. And that was the first time that my parents really saw what was possible. I mean, they heard me playing in my room and they had a concept, but like I had never played with anybody before, and I was just kind of tossed on stage to play with musicians for the first time. So if I think back to that, it was a really incredible way to start my life as a musician, which is very different from how a lot of people come up now, which is just playing, and some people even having careers just playing in their bedrooms. I was like kind of a gigging musician from that point on. People were suggesting, hey, this kid should have a band around him. So the only sort of logical thing to do at that point was for me to play with much older musicians. And because, as we know, the venues in town, mostly, bar related. So for about a year or so, I mostly just went around sitting in with bands like Friends. There was a great blues band around here called One Step South I used to play with sometimes, Bad Weather Blues. And it just inched toward like the first incarnation of the Randy McStine band, which I believe debuted at the Old Country Pines. I'm attaching old to everything because they're either not existent anymore or they've changed names.
I'm not even recognizing
some of these.
Some of these are like
amazing. I guess it's probably the Pines Pavilion now. It's out in 26. Okay. And it was 1999, so I was in 6th grade when I started gigging pretty much every weekend.
They didn't call you to play at Woodstock?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, really.
So to really get back to your original point, it's like, because by the time I was in 6th grade and then off to middle school, high school, I was always playing with people who were on average 20 years older than me.
So you weren't playing in like the band at school?
No, because it just it didn't. A, there wasn't really time for it, but B, it didn't really make sense.
Right.
I mean, in retrospect, it would have been great to have a band with my friends, and I dabbled a little bit in high school with friends who were, starting like punk bands and stuff, and I would just come over, and I think for a senior talent show, like we threw together some songs so that we could all play together. But it felt very alien to me just because I didn't have that experience of like growing up with a friend who was also starting to learn to play at the same time. I bypassed that whole thing. So that just wasn't my
What an
my
interesting way to start your music career, of the first time that you ever play a gig, a crowd forming around you. Like
right.
The first time that you're playing publicly, and you kind of touched on it. So you'll have people either just being great musicians just in the room, but you also have people who, they go out and they eat dirt at open mics and stuff like that.
Sure.
And they just craft their skill from it. It's like same thing with comedy. It's like you're gonna bomb, you're gonna have all these
that's
horrible,
the most painful thing.
Yeah, but it's like, for right out of the gate, what an encouraging way to start your music career.
In retrospect, I'm really fortunate for how things happen. And again, there's a give and take to all of that, because obviously there are experiences that I didn't have as a result of it, but essentially, like, it tossed me into a semi-professional environment right away, and I had to have the responsibility of like being at the gig, being out late, learning sets worth of cover tunes at that point, and being a professional musician. And obviously growing up in those environments, you will grow up quickly because you see and hear a lot of things. And I think that's something that was probably tough for some people to really be down with, because look, if I was a parent, because I'm not, I know you are, I think about, like, if I was in that position now, and would I bring my kid to a bar to play gigs 10 to 2 in the morning? Yeah, probably not.
Yeah, it's not to go so off of the music, but having the opportunity of playing with people much older than me.
Yeah.
I mean, one of the first bands I played in, I was about 18, but all of the guys I was playing with, they were like in their 50s, 60s.
Uh-huh.
And you learn so much talking to different people older than you, that are treating you with respect.
Yes.
They're not talking to you like you're an 18-year-old, 19-year-old kid. They're talking to you like a musician, that's with them.
Right.
And sharing ideas, and I think that's so important and very valuable for us. But I think about that too, because recently we've done a couple sessions with our friend Devin Ty, who's 17.
Oh my God, he's so good.
He's really great, but it's funny, we're like talking and we're like, oh my goodness, I forget this. This is a kid who's got
Yeah.
my
Right.
parents. You know what I mean? Like we
Yeah.
should have had like a permission slip or something sent out.
I needed that in the beginning. We had to get permits from the city of Binghamton to
from the city of
allow
Binghamton.
me into those venues. And there were times that CPS or whatever people would be there and they would call in and try to shut the gig
What?
down. Yeah, it didn't happen too often, but it happened. Yeah, because
Where's the time?
I know, right? Yeah, so it's like
They're
two.
getting something out of it though. They're getting to see the show.
Yeah, but like 1999, 2000, that's when I started, building a name around town. So the word was definitely out. It was sort of a commodity for a while, the so-called prodigy. But yeah, to your point, so many people. I mean, obviously, it's a big topic socially. There's a lot of generational strife at the moment, but I tend to try to not get into those things because my experience is that it's always been the wisdom that has come from working with people who are older than me who have had experiences that I've yet to have. Not only do you learn a lot about what to do, but also what not to do, because if you're an observant person, and I always tried to take in as much as I could of any situation, you take stock in like okay, I really like this, but I don't like this so much. I think I'm going to avoid that path. And it kind of gives you not a shortcut, but you can go with that. It allows you to see and hear things that you can avoid for yourself.
Yeah, I mean, because you kind of have a vision of a trajectory of what you plan to do, and then in the meantime, you get to either go, oh, well, maybe I won't do that because of what they did, or I'll do that and maybe just do it my way, and it'll work out the way that it has to, And I think that's important because when we're sharing our experiences, the outcomes aren't always going to be the same. Just because somebody had maybe not the best outcome when they had tried it, doesn't mean that you can, create your own way of doing it. And that's what it's so great about absorbing that information and seeing that. I think that's so cool.
I think you guys might resonate with this. So I'm in the same boat of playing with older players since I had played since I was so little. But I think, and like what you guys are saying is you've gathered a lot of wisdom, a lot of kind of these mindsets that not a typical person of that age would have. The amount of people that have no idea that I'm like 26, they all think that I'm like 30 years old just from the way that I hold myself, my interest, what I'm talking about.
Sure.
And it's been like that since I was a kid. Like I've always been into old cars, old music, old everything. It's like they're like, how old are you? Like what era are you in?
Exactly.
It's because the people that I was spending the most time around were older. Always.
Yep.
It was interesting.
Like the pop culture and whatnot, like the jokes and things.
Yeah, they're like did you hear the new Miley Cyrus song? No. We just covered one. But but back then, no, I didn't hear it. Yeah. I was listening to Eric Johnson and Stevie Ray Vaughan.
Right, exactly.
That was it.
But still, I mean, so what did you say, you're 26 or 27?
26.
26.
26. Okay, so I'll be 35 next month. And
happy early birthday.
Thank you. But the thing is, like, yeah, being 11, 12 years old, playing gigs every weekend, in town and out, Cortland, we used to go up and play gigs there all the time. And also in a pre-social media age, pre-YouTube kind of thing, there are a lot of things about my time coming up as a musician, how young I was, and the context of all of that is just completely different now. And I mean, like, we used to film gigs with like, a VHS camcorder just to have, for posterity. Somewhere there are hundreds of gigs,
What do you call it?
Jeff's got them.
Yeah, Jeff's got them all. Every single one of them. Jeff has got it. What's his? How do you say? Estes.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
He's at. We often joke. We're like, he must have like 4 clones because he's at every single gig and he has a video of every single one of them.
So there you go.
Funny.
But yeah, there was nothing to really do with that stuff back then, other than cut together a tape to send for more gigs or a press kit. I mean, I come from the days of like having to go to Kinko's to put together the press kit with the binding and all of that kind of stuff. You know, it's so antiquated now, but that was the way it was.
Yeah.
And it wasn't that. I mean, it was long ago now that I think about it. I mean, 23 years is a long time. It just doesn't feel like it was that long ago.
Yeah. I think that's a great point, because what we kind of tend to forget is the technology that we have is really there as a convenience.
Right.
Not needing to go to Kinko's anymore. Now you can do a lot of those things on your phone.
Here's your Dropbox file.
File. Exactly. Here's a link.
EPK, here you are, and there it is. I guess the tough part now is just learning how to use those tools and how to create it, which is what we've been having a lot of fun doing here, and helping out some bands that don't have the access to those things, or really maybe the want to figure those things out, but can use a little bit of help with it. That's so interesting. Yeah, I've never thought about how you all were doing it 20 years ago.
Of course, yeah, because you're born into whatever the circumstance is.
I was talking to a friend the other day, and I was like, man, that must have been so tough not having a cell phone and just getting ditched. Hey, we're gonna meet here in an hour, but they can't tell you, I'm not feeling too well, I can't make it.
Exactly.
Yeah. You just have to show up and
sit there.
So
I guess we'll sit here for an hour.
Where should I go?
Yep. Yeah.
Sure, for sure. That's great. So I mean, one of the first times I got to see you play, I was probably 15 or 16. I was probably in high school. It's funny, I don't think we've talked about this much, but I mean, I don't want to get into a whole can of worms here. But I grew up as a Jehovah's Witness. My parents are, my dad is still a Jehovah's Witness. And as a musician, it's kind of funny how it's tough to get people to come out to your shows. And as a Jehovah's Witness, it's tough to talk to people. You're going knocking on random people's doors.
Right.
So my dad knocked on John's door.
Oh,
John
okay.
Knazowicz, and they talked for a little bit, and John invited us to come down to Barnaby's.
That's crazy.
To that show. And,
okay.
And that's
so crazy.
How I first saw him. You know what I mean? Hey, we gotta get people coming to our shows. Yeah, we'll sit down and talk to you for a little bit.
That's great.
The same people.
So, yeah, right.
Funny.
It's so funny how that happened. But it was funny because at the time I was playing a lot of music or learning how to play music. Liam and I were jamming, and my dad was like, "Yeah, you should come out to the show." And it was so cool to see you guys then.
Did we have Jim Rosati playing with us,
Just
or
the
it was a duo? Okay,
Yeah,
because we shifted for a while. We went trio, and we used to play there a lot.
John came up to me and he says, "Yeah, I'm sorry, there's no drums tonight, but just imagine they're there."
He would say that. Yeah.
I think the first time I saw you play was at EPAC. Now I had in my head that you were 16, maybe playing there. Does that sound about right?
Yes, but it depends on what you saw. Was it one of their productions?
I was so little. I know a kind of more of a heavier, harder, punkish band had opened up for you.
Oh, okay. So it was my own show then. Yeah. Yeah, that sounds about right.
What kind of music were you even playing? This was such a faint memory. I just remember knowing that it was and first of all, an amazing show. I still have somewhere a signed CD that you gave to me.
Wow.
Somewhere. It's in those things at Mom's house.
Yeah, the little
those old school CD racks. We still have those hanging around. It's somewhere in there. I gotta look for that. But what kind of music do you think that you would have been playing around then?
Well, yeah. So let's carry this through. So basically, I start really playing out a lot in 1999, 2000. Started with the Randy McStine band, and then I started playing with a band called Giant Steps, which had gone through many incarnations in town with a lot of great musicians. And I did that for a while. We wrote a few original tunes. We did a little EP, but before we really got it out there, I left and started moving toward my own original music. And I mean, there's always been this dual nature of being in some sort of cover band situation, but also doing original music. Obviously, the interest in original music from my perspective became more and more of what I wanted to do. But typically there would have to be a balance. You know, you would find yourself either sneaking in originals to the cover set or trying to come up with a balance so that everybody could sort of get what they wanted out of the experience. And my early original music was instrumental guitar based stuff because I didn't sing. And then I started singing when I was 15. And that's when my writing and taste started to shift in that direction. And so I'm guessing that when you saw me there, do you know if I had any vocals?
I must have been 7 or 8 years old.
Okay.
So
That's fine.
I thought I was 10.
I'm guessing. I'm guessing
it
it was probably a hybrid of some vocal tunes that I was writing and instrumental stuff that I had been playing. And I mean, they seem like really massive transitions to me at the time, but if I think back, these things probably happened a little quicker than I realized. But yeah, between 15 and graduating, graduated from UE in 2006. That was a transition with this trio that I had, a great bass player named Mike Cook, who has played with the band Last Call for many years, and a really good drummer named Nate Horton out of the Cortland area. Yeah, we would go down to like the bitter end in New York City and play a monthly set of original instrumental tunes, and then that started to morph into these vocal tunes that I was writing. So yeah, to answer your question, I would say the stuff I was writing then was like heavy rock with a lot of progressive influences, and me just trying to find my voice for the first time, both literally my voice and also as a lyricist and stuff like that.
So when you say progressive influences, could you name a couple of those artists?
Well, I'm staring at this Rush poster.
Oh yeah.
So that would be an obvious one. We were a power trio, so if I think about like progressive trio based stuff, it would be Rush or a great band called King's X, which I was a huge fan of growing up.
Eric Johnson
the
did
Police,
a lot
of course. Eric Johnson. So I was really into like a lot of technical heavy rock things like Dream Theater and stuff like that.
Were you a Satriani fan?
Big time. Yeah,
Oh,
yeah.
okay.
I was growing up for sure. And that was a huge influence on the instrumental portion of what I was doing. But when it was shifting toward vocals, it was just heavy riffs, but I had an interest in trying to find a way to bring in I don't want to say pop melodies, but more of that kind of thing, because my tastes were really starting to reach out into the realms of like power pop, and I was even starting to listen to jazz, even though that wasn't really making its way into the music. But yeah, I felt a different sort of writing responsibility as a vocalist to try to figure out like, well, what am I singing about? What does my voice even sound like? I was very shy about starting to sing, and I sort of resisted it for a while, and then it made sense to do it, and then I learned to enjoy it along the way. But for many years I felt like the expression of being a vocalist was so far behind my expression as a guitarist, because guitar was just my thing and it was natural to me, and emotionally speaking it's not as, to me, it's nowhere near as vulnerable as being a vocalist. Yeah. Because if you're singing a song and there isn't whatever that thing is behind it, people can kind of tell. So I think a lot of my early singing it's not that it wasn't inspired, it's just I didn't believe in it yet. So you're singing the words, but how much are you really connecting with it? Right. I feel like in the last few years that has really shifted for me. I've sort of like accepted myself as a singer and put myself in that role to say like, this is what I want to do as a singer, and that has now changed my perspective.
So on a selfish level, what is one tip that you would have for someone who is looking to try to find their voice, to try to get out? And I guess step number one, what did you do? How did you breach that?
I took some vocal lessons for a while from a great teacher named Hillary Klein. She taught at McNeil Music. She doesn't live in the area anymore, but she was a part of the Tri-Cities Opera.
Oh, okay. Wow.
And she really set me on my way. You know, I remember going in for my first lesson, learning the warm-ups and stuff, and being like really shy as I was. It was just like, it's like internally it was like really hard for me to do. But I remember she sort of, you know, she was just testing out where my range was. And by the time, you know, I'm trying to think how long I took lessons, probably for a few months. But by the time I stopped, I mean, my range had grown in leaps and bounds. I was still probably, I could have taken more from those lessons if I had been more open at the time. If I could go back now, of course, I would be much more, just more open to the lessons. I was always shy. I didn't really want to sing all that much. But again, this is the thing about playing live. You know, you sort of throw yourself to the wolves, and by the time you would have seen me in a duo context, like the purpose of forming that duo was essentially to get better as a vocalist. You know, which was to take away the band. It's just two guys with acoustic guitars or a keyboard, and it's all about vocal harmony. Because I was never in a situation where I was doing that. And it was a way to sort of like be as vulnerable as possible through those cover tunes that we used to play. You know,
like
the Beatles, the Who. Yeah, totally.
And it's really a great exercise.
Yeah.
You know, as you said, in getting that reaction from the crowd. So, I mean, what was about how much space from the, you know, playing at EPAC and doing some of the progressive stuff to getting to play as a duo and focusing on some of that? Like, what's that kind of timeline looking like from when you started taking those voice lessons and starting to perform as more of a vocalist?
Yeah, it was about a 3-year period.
Okay.
A lot of these things that started to overlap, you know, so if I put my honest start into singing at the age of 15, then I'm mostly playing with my trio at that point, more focused on original music. But again, when we're booking gigs around town, we're playing cover tunes that are in the general vicinity of what some of the original stuff is. And it was heavier music. So yeah, we're doing like Ozzy and Sabbath and stuff like that, you know, just heavy riff-based things. And also the guitar being the focal point as well. I think I started doing the duo in the summer of 2005.
Okay.
So, yeah, that sounds about right, I think. Yeah, I was heading into my senior year of high school.
Nice.
And both of those things were happening at the same time. But then by the time I graduated, the trio had broken up, and I just continued to do gigs around town.
So, and that was another question I want to ask. So after graduation, you were kind of hitting the ground running and staying with music?
Yeah, it was of course that crucial moment of deciding whether or not to go to college. And it seemed to make sense to just keep going.
Because the pedal was on the metal,
yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, you were going already.
And I had a lot of close, near misses. Yeah. Like, the consistency of playing in New York City opened up opportunities for, at that time, you know, the possibility that somebody from a record label would come down and see a set.
Because that's still in that era as well. Totally. It's where that would happen.
Yeah, like, at that point, like, MySpace is the prominent sort of independent platform that's starting to come of age, essentially.
It's funny because I mean, when I think about MySpace, I never had one.
Yeah.
I mean, we were kind of young.
I had my top 10 on there. I had a top 10 songs on there.
Oh yeah.
I was in it.
So was that a good tool for promoting music at all?
No, it was. I mean, it became like the first kind of social media based platform to upload your music. And
those VHS tapes on there.
Yeah, exactly. But yeah, you'd put 3 or 4 songs or like MP3s or whatever up there, and try to promote and do that whole thing. But it was the usual stuff, eventually you get a couple of people who have like legitimate careers from it, and then everybody starts flooding in. And then it got to the point where you could pay for these bots to add supposed fans to your page. That's when it's
all over,
going downhill. But yeah, that was the way at that moment. But yeah, out of high school, it kind of just made sense to keep going. And yeah, that was a tough transitional period because I was watching my friends go off into whatever that next step of adulthood is, but I'm still just kind of, playing the bars around town, doing my thing. And I started to get a bit jaded about how things were going, because it sounds ridiculous now, because you're talking about like an 18-year-old kid, but having played out for, at that point, already 6 or 7 years, and kind of dealing with this constant, like, you're the next this, or you're gonna be this, it started to get annoying to like have people come up to me at a local gig and essentially say like, I thought you were going to be like famous by now.
Wow. Yeah, psychologically I could only imagine what you had to go through.
It was a bit of a beat down in that sense. And the other thing that bothered me, and I think maybe is something that I still have honestly a bit of a chip on my shoulder about, is that the transition into original music was not overall met with the same enthusiasm as the dancing monkey playing cover tunes, at the bars every weekend. It's like it had a shelf life of interest, but it didn't carry through to, oh no, this is what I want to say. It's not about all that stuff. And that's always been a source of contention for me. Like doing the covers and solo and duo gigs and stuff, that was fun, and that had a completely different purpose. But I found it increasingly difficult to find the motivation to want to share my own music, because I felt like there was just rarely a platform for it or the interest in it, so it was kind of few and far between. I started to set my sights elsewhere, so I moved away for a year to be, I couldn't afford to live in New York City, but I wanted to be close enough to be in striking distance. So I moved down there and basically hung out for a year. I had a job at a guitar shop. I was living in New Jersey, and it didn't really yield much. I still found myself actually coming back like for a weekend, like a long weekend every month, just to play gigs and, pay the bills kind of thing. Right. But I had gone down there also to start learning home recording, not specifically home recording. I wanted to learn how to use Pro Tools. So I did this like 3.5 week, really intense course, came out with a piece of paper that said I supposedly knew what I was doing, and thought for a moment that maybe I would give up on the whole artist thing and just get into engineering, because it would just be easier and maybe less emotionally.
A little more security involved with something like that.
Yeah. But what it really did was it got my interest going in home recording and in building, starting to build enough gear to make music in my apartment. And, and so that's how that started. And once I started doing that, I realized, no, I don't want to stop making music. Of course, it's what I love to do. Then it sort of shifted to just spending as much time as possible just making stuff. And my lease was up. I came back here. I felt a bit down, because it was that first time moving away from the Shire and coming back, and I felt like it wasn't on my own terms. I felt like I had no other choice, really.
When about was that when you came back?
That was the January of 2009.
Okay.
Yeah, because I stayed around for a couple of years after I graduated, which was summer of 2006, and just played a lot of gigs. And worked some jobs too. I worked at Enjoy for a bit, in the cart barn, like cleaning. Doing the Enjoy thing. Did some landscaping stuff for a bit, and then moved away for a year. Came back, moved up to a place on North Roosevelt, which was a great setup because there was a 2-family house, and then behind it was an above garage apartment, and that was my place. And because it was detached, I could basically make as much noise as I wanted. And that, I didn't know it at the time, but that became me sort of hitting the reset button on my career, because I started writing and recording stuff in the apartment, which became this project called Lo-Fi Resistance. And that started to put me in touch with people in the world, other musicians, fans of the kind of music that I was making. And I started sort of living not a double life, but essentially, still playing around here doing the cover gigs and stuff like that. But I was making a name for myself elsewhere. And a few years of doing that started to get me onto different tours with bands and stuff. And then I found myself being a touring professional musician while still living here.
Where were you putting this? Like, how were you reaching out to them? So you would record inside of your apartment. Where would you put it after that? Were you doing social media at that point?
Well, that's the early days of Facebook.
Yeah.
Early days of Facebook. Like, I actually, funny enough, clicked on the Facebook memories the other day and saw one from exactly yesterday. Well, I don't know when this is going to air, but it was like May 12th, 2010, and it was me promoting a show around here of my own original music for that first Lo-Fi Resistance album.
How many likes did it have?
1. Now, people did show up to the gig, but but there was no Facebook presence whatsoever. Right. I actually took a screenshot of it. It was 1 like, 1 comment, and then I scrolled up to my memory from last year, about to make a debut with my McStine and Miniman project, and a picture that I posted, and it was like 600 likes and 100 comments or whatever. I was like, oh yeah, how it started, how it's going. But yeah, I was making the music there, and then I had that early 20s ambition of starting to just reach out to publications and other musicians and stuff through the internet to just try to get the music heard. And then it was still like, printing 1,000 CDs and trying to find online stores that would take it and do their write-ups and all of that. It was a lot of work. It was a lot of mailing stuff.
Would you ever camp out by, well, maybe not at this time, but like not camping, but hanging out by like the radio stations with a CD or anything like that?
I did some radio stuff when I was younger, but again, there wasn't much of an outlet for original music. I would go on like The Whale and do an interview, and I would bring a little amp and play riffs and stuff, but there wasn't a whole lot going on for like, because that transition had already started with a lot of corporate-based radio where they can't actually play your song on the radio because the playlist is coming down from on high. I mean, college would have been an option, I suppose, and there was a little bit of that too. But yeah, it's weird. My career is not one that I think is easily explained or duplicated. I wouldn't suggest. I mean, I could give people advice on what to do and what not to do, but
you gotta start playing when you're 5.
Yeah, right. Yeah, start there.
Step 1.
But certainly the way things have happened and the timing and all of that is really, it's everybody has their own story, and mine has been interesting. A lot of times it's felt agonizingly slow, and I've had supreme peaks and valleys. But I've been doing it long enough to like, I remember when I turned 30, I felt like I did a recap on like the last 10 years up, to that point, and that I had to really acknowledge that I had made it to a point where my catalog of music, the musicians I was working with, the people that I knew, and the people that I could reach out to if I was really in bad times, that it was going to be all right. Yeah. But I'd never felt that way like in it when I was in it.
I mean, you literally put every single stone into place to.
Yeah.
I mean, it is one stone at a time.
For sure.
Did it, which is not the way that everyone. Sometimes people are just born connected, like they're within
that's
their
true.
family. It's like that happens, but you had to build every single step.
And what I'm hearing, and what is a great first step for people, or first two steps from your story, is consistency and adaptability.
Yeah.
You have adapted through the changes of social media, and now that's changed,
Yeah.
because in 2010 there was only you and a few other people putting music out there, where now in 2023 there's music all over Facebook and all over
Saturated,
Instagram.
yeah.
Well, every day it's something like, the amount of content in all areas being uploaded is up to a certain point, like more than the entire history of the world.
Yeah.
Like literally,
Right.
but just every day,
There's
so
just simply not enough eyes to see everything.
well, or
People
just
post 3-4
enough
times
time.
a day.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's diminishing returns, I mean, don't get me started on that. I mean, because that's a really hard thing, I think, for all of us to deal with, just the sort of self-worth part of basically having to upload your heart and soul to these algorithms that then seem to decide whether or not it should be seen by people. And sometimes you get it's like winning a lotto ticket or
I was
something.
just gonna use
You've
that,
got like
yeah.
a great one, and you're like, wow. And then the next time, it's like they cut it down, like a quarter or something, and it's very frustrating. But to your point, adaptability and consistency. You just have to kind of keep doing it. And
Yeah, it's not taking that to heart either, because at the end of the day, it's not like the algorithm is looks at you and goes, I don't like Randy.
right.
I'm not going to put this one out. I don't
Yeah.
like Randy anymore. But it's just a matter of, I mean, it simply could have been there was a crazy thing going on within the world, and everyone's eyes was on that one thing. You happen to post at that same time.
Yeah.
It sucks, and that could have been a substantially better piece that you just put out. But you
That's
can't.
the thing. That's the killer.
Yeah, I mean that's what sucks. But it's also knowing that you have it and you can post it again. Like you can, the amount of people that I see on TikTok saying that you can repost your videos, you can continuously do that, because, and even if they don't have a crazy high like count or anything like that, repost the video that didn't do well but you think has a great message. Because maybe yesterday wasn't the day, but maybe tomorrow will be. Right. It's interesting. Yeah, the algorithm doesn't hate people. It just kind of does its thing.
It does its thing. Yeah, it's weird like that. It's a weird code, how that all works.
Well, hey, let's talk gear. Anyway,
Yeah.
it's good to see you, Moses. So you
All right, so let's talk about your drum set here.
well, you can do that
I
too.
would
You're a
love to.
phenomenal
Yeah.
drummer.
Oh, thank you.
You had the lead too.
Mm-hmm.
Where did you go after that? I mean, where did you really feel comfortable? What were you playing? Were you playing mainly? God, I think I saw you on an Ibanez at one point.
Well, so what became my, my signature instrument was built for me by Harris Thor.
Get out of here.
And Harris, of course, is a great guitar player, luthier, and fixer of all sorts of gear. I met him in 1999, and basically the mission was for him to build me a custom guitar. And he had lent me what he called his number one, which was a guitar that he built for himself out of various parts. And the odd feature about that was that it had a graphite neck. And the concept behind that being is that you don't have to worry about adjusting it as much, and it doesn't like warp like wood and stuff. And I thought it was a really interesting feel. And speaking of adaptability, like I'll just get this out of the way. I'm not the type of instrument nerd that like fixates on the wood and the dimensions and all this kind of stuff. I pretty much just like if it feels good to me after a little while, I can adapt to what the instrument is. I don't get too crazy about customizing everything. But in this case, it was the point was it for it to be a custom guitar for me. I had some ideas in mind of just the kind of tones that I wanted to get out of it, and he was able to achieve that. So
how old were you? I'm sorry.
I was 12 when I got that
12
guitar.
years old.
Yeah.
Having people build you custom guitars. That's been it. So like
so that's what I was playing.
Ergonomically, like what did they do? I mean, I'm at 12 years old. I can only imagine like just how big your body was, like your structure. How was it built? Was it a full size guitar? Was it trimmed down at all?
No, it's
in any
full
ways?
size. That one's full size, and the neck on it is actually pretty wide.
Interesting.
The Fender Lead 2 though is a smaller scale,
Yeah.
so it was a great one to start with. But yeah, I had the Fender Lead 2. I had a Gibson Melody Maker for a little amount of time. I wish I still had that. It was like
What year was that?
67 or something. That was pretty cool. But Harris's guitar, which was dubbed the Viking, that became my main instrument, and I essentially used that for just about everything, all the way up till just a few years ago when I decided that I really wanted to get out of my comfort zone. I was tired of hearing the way I sounded playing the instrument, and so I started to seek other things to challenge me in a different way, you know, and to get me out of just the rut of some of what I thought were cliches.
Some new inspiration. That's what I call it. That's my excuse. Anytime I want to buy a new pedal, it's just I need some inspiration.
I mean, look, you're right. Some of that is, you know, a bit of a story that you tell yourself. But if you radically shift something, I'm saying as an excuse. It is a real thing, but it's always my excuse. Yeah, yeah, for sure. So yeah, that's what I was playing then, and then throughout the years, you know, just other instruments have come in. I mean, like right now, the instrument that speaks to me the most, just at a soul level, is my 59 custom shop Les Paul reissue.
Oh, I saw that. That thing is gorgeous.
It's
the top
unbelievable.
On that is ridiculous.
Yeah.
Is that a Murphy?
It's a Murphy.
Labs?
Yeah. And it was done when he was like prior to, like, they offer those now, but this was like sent in to him to do. And I bought it secondhand at Binghamton.
Oh, they just got what is it? It's a Silvertone 1464 or something like that. I just picked that up.
Yeah, every once in a while I get the itch to go there, and I know that my bank account is going to cry.
Yeah.
And that was such a case where I, like, summer of 21, you know, haven't been gigging for a while. And that's another thing too. I mean, not to linger there, but when the whole COVID thing hit, of course everybody had plans that got derailed, but I had to realize that was the first time in literally 20 years that I went more than a couple weeks without playing a gig. So
what was that like?
It was wild. Yeah.
I mean, because like it was weird because like I had just started playing again. I had like one gig and it was like, I know, back to how it was, but like,
yeah,
that's wild.
Yeah. It was something. You start to shift your ideas about like who you are and in relation to what you do, you know, because
you were
like 32 at the time, probably.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So that's like an age too. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's like,
for sure.
Yeah.
But yeah, about a year in, you know, summer of 21, I just got on this wicked like blues rock kick, ZZ Top records and stuff, and I was like, man, I've had a double cutaway Les Paul for a long time, which is really nice.
Very cool.
But it's not the classic thing.
Is it the old like kind of Rick Beato looking? He has a blue. I think it's a blue double cut, or maybe that's a different.
Yeah, I know what you're talking about. This almost looks more like a combination of like a PRS and like a Hamer or something.
Okay.
Really, really beautiful guitar. It sounds great, but I just really wanted like a proper Les Paul.
Mm-hmm.
So I went to Binghamton to see if they had any, and they're like, well, we've got this one. And, you know, it's in the back room where the super high-end stuff
I have
is.
a couple guitars from the back.
Yeah. And I play it for 5 minutes. I didn't even plug it in. I was like, this is amazing. Call me when you have something that's not this price. But of course, I couldn't stop thinking about it. And I messaged a friend of mine who's like a real Les Paul aficionado, and I told him what it was. And he's like, no, you have to have that guitar. Like, you you need it and you deserve it.
Mm-hmm.
I was like, oh, that's not what I was expecting to hear. So I called them back and I was like, I'm going to take it. And I'm so glad I did, because it's just, the playing that thing is just indescribable to me. But I'm very fortunate, in the throughout my life and my career. I mean, my interest is just always in trying to up my game personally, but also just sonically find new territories. And I always just reinvested. Anytime I'd come home from a tour, for better or worse, most of it would go towards trying to pump up the home studio
Nice.
or new gear. And I mean this when I say it, like, it's always very intentional. I'm not somebody who has a problem just acquiring gear. Like, I have now, I have acquired a lot. So if you walk into the room, it's like, oh, he's got a lot of stuff. But, I remember incrementally how that all came to be. And I'm fortunate to be at a point now, too, where, there are companies who are in touch with me, and they're happy to have me playing stuff. So some of those doors have opened up, and that's nice, because there's so much amazing gear out there, of course. I mean, the amount of pedals, when the catalogs and stuff come in, I have to just throw them out, because it's overwhelming.
It is.
You do have to commit to something,
It seems like you really like the Eventide products, though.
I like the Eventides a lot. They're super powerful. I've got a couple of the H9s, which was like their flagship thing for a while, and now they've got this H90, which I'm using in the performance for this, which has just like amazing, very creative sounds.
So for anyone else who's nerding out with the guitar stuff, we have two 5E3s in the room, and we're really gonna have to put some time into this recording. It has to sound amazing, because in the room it sounds so good. I need it. We gotta capture that. It was so good. It was so good. Very impressive.
Thank you.
Very cool.
Thanks for the amps.
It was all the Eventide.
Yeah, right. Yeah, not me at all. But actually, to that point, though, the song that I played, it's called "Economy of Differences." It was written essentially because of that Eventide, because I had gotten it and I hadn't messed around with it much, and I actually had it set up with some keyboards, and then I was like, I gotta plug my guitar into this, and I found this really interesting, I guess you'd call it like a harmonic delay algorithm, where you play, and as the delay trails start to bloom, they set off these different harmonics within the notes. And I was like, oh, that's really pretty. And I just started finding stuff, and then writing a vocal melody, and that's how it worked. And it allowed me to also, because it just swims for a really long time, just leave a lot of space in the playing. It's like every note is just super. There's no need for extra stuff, because you play a note and it just kind of rings for 10 seconds. So I'm really into that kind of sound design stuff, just as much as I love just an old school rock and roll tone.
I'd imagine it probably let you explore a little bit more in the vocals as well, because you're not doing as much with your hands. You're just able to really dig in, which is what I heard anyways. I don't know how much you feel as far as it sounded like a very complex vocal song. That's why I say
it is. Yeah. It's in that context. Yeah, it's it allows for the vocal melody to kind of move around while these sustained notes and chords just kind of ring. The guitar at that point serves like a dual purpose of almost being partially a keyboard instrument and a guitar instrument. And my interest in different sounds, different genres of music, that's a huge part of this conversation, honestly, because it has allowed me the kind of flexibility, as not only as an artist but as a sideman, to do everything from Pink Floyd and Simon and Garfunkel tribute bands to playing now with one of the biggest progressive rock bands of all time, essentially. and it's that knowledge and the combination of tastes that have put me in line for those types of gigs, because I'm not a one-trick pony. Which is to say, on the other hand, there's nothing wrong with being somebody who just goes really, really deep with this specific thing. In some ways, that can be beneficial because you take all of the other options off the table and you say, like, no, I'm just a blues guitar player, I'm just this, or I'm just that. By narrowing your options, you sort of focus in on just being as good as you can be at that one thing. I have so many different interests that sometimes it's actually hard for me to rein it in, because I go into my studio and I'm like, do I want to write a song? Do I want to sit at the piano and play for a while? Do I want to get behind the drum kit? It's this musical sort of fantasy land, but at the end of the day, something has to be moving forward, and you can find yourself kind of circling for a little bit.
I found myself deep into the blues category, so I'm trying to do exactly the opposite. Like, I'm trying to have a little bit more of your problem right now, where it's I was just blues. That's all I was. I love the blues, but
Me too.
do need to branch out. I have to.
Yeah.
What kind of drum pedals are you into? I'm sorry.
The DW9000, great drum. See, it's funny. Guitarists don't think that we use pedals.
Yeah, right.
Well,
yeah, they forget that we're actually using pedals all the time.
The whole time.
Gotta hold that hi hat. You gotta hold that hi hat down. And I mean, the pedal work is a thing as well.
Drums are important.
Drums
Listen,
are great.
More than anything, it's my connection with the drummer that's the thing that I need. Like, that, if there's one musical partnership that I'm always wanting to have and connect with, it's the drummer, because without that, it's not there.
Yeah, I see you working with Jeff and
Jeff Howard.
Yeah.
Oh my God,
yeah, Jeff's great.
So good.
Love Jeff so much. I've gotten to know him a little bit more and more over the last few years, and he's a phenomenal progressive drummer. And you talk about somebody that sharpens their skill. That's Jeff. I mean, he's a specialist.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? He is such an amazing drummer. I was talking to him. We saw him at Ransom Steele. This was like a couple months ago, and Liam was like noticing something that he was doing, and I was like, well, you want to see something really crazy? I said, watch what he's doing with his left foot on the hi-hat pedal, where he's doing like this with just one foot while he's over here. Like,
it's crazy.
That right there is some amazing technical drumming, and he's a great guy. I got to get with him sometime. And
what I say? I was like, God, his double kick is nuts. He's like,
I was like, you're not using double kick.
I'm like, yeah, he is. I see both of his feet like going. He's like,
no.
He's
like
doing that with one foot. I'm like, that is crazy.
Yeah, no, Jeff's great. We've become really close recently. It turns out we're like kindred spirits. We're practically like brothers. So many commonalities. It's crazy, actually. But that connection with the drummer, I mean, that's always been the thing that is super important to the music, and I've been incredibly fortunate to literally work with some of the best drummers in the world.
When you were working with Nick DiVirgilio, was he playing drums or bass?
Mostly drums.
Okay.
Yeah. So
watched a lot of his like demo videos.
Nick's amazing.
Yeah.
He's one of my best friends, and to go back to the apartment North Roosevelt, starting to write music, which became this lo-fi resistance thing. He was the guy that I sort of like. I was a big fan of his work then.
Yeah.
And I had planned on playing drums just because I wanted to experiment with playing everything on the tracks. And in the end, there was just things I was writing that were beyond what I was capable of doing. And I literally just like went over to my music collection, and I was thinking like, who can I possibly hire, through file sharing, that kind of thing, who I might be able to actually approach. And I thought Nick would be the perfect drummer, and I got in touch with him through his website, hired him to play on a song. He really liked it, played on the rest, and he mixed it, and then we became really close friends throughout the years. And he was the first guy to sort of open up that door to like, here's somebody who has a really great pedigree and catalog of music and is really renowned, and he's starting to tell people about me, and he's wanting to work on new music with me specifically. Nice. And that sort of branched out into all of these different territories.
Yeah, I think as a drummer, we've talked about this before. As a drummer, playing is very important, but learning how to mix and listening is really the most important thing.
Swiss Army knife.
Right, yeah, being a little bit of a Swiss Army knife,
right. And
getting the ideas of like levels and how sounds and instruments blend with one another. Mm-hmm. From my personal experience, playing with Caviar and Grits and Kid Best in the Magic Ring, for me, it's I play around the vocalist.
Yes.
I'm and doing my best to keep my ego out, and not focus on technical or being loud or a lot of fills, but how can I elevate the vocalist? How can I support the vocalist in the best place or in the best space?
Right.
And even kind of going with what you were with your performance, and having that space in the performance allows you to not only be a musician, but to be a performer, you know, and to create an actual show.
Right.
And to me, that's such an important part, and something I'm very passionate about, is as a drummer, knowing your role, and sometimes that isn't the role, depending on the type of music, where there are some types of music that are more drum forward.
Yes.
But was that one of the first instruments you played outside of guitar?
Yeah. So I took an interest just like when we'd be setting up for gigs in town. I always wanted to get behind the drum kit.
Sneaky guitarist.
Yeah, exactly. Right.
Did you send me a meme the other day?
Yeah,
where it's
I've
just
seen
like
a few of those lately.
Yeah, it's like the guitarist behind the drum kit, and it's just like, oh, me.
Yeah,
what are you doing
exactly.
back there?
Yeah, so I started to take an interest just being at gigs, and playing drums through a PA system, just like that feeling is great.
Nothing like that.
So yeah, and again, the music that I listen to, like my listening skills really started to deepen, and I think one of the major things about just my journey as a musician and learning to play other instruments is to inhabit that role, and you start to think differently about the other roles surrounding it. When you're just laser focused on the guitar player, and I shred, and that's what I do, how much are you paying attention to what the drummer's doing, what the bass player's doing, and et cetera. So like you talking about following the vocals is something I heard The Edge from U2 talk about in relation to the drummer of U2, Larry Mullen, I think.
I'm not too familiar.
Yeah, Larry Mullen. And he said that basically that's his superpower. I mean, that's what they were talking about, monitor mixes actually. And he said like Larry just really wants to hear the vocals, and everything he plays is trying to support that and dynamically build with the vocals. And whatever the context is, you have to know what the focal point is supposed to be, and when to be a feature or when to get out of the way. And that's a case by case basis, because some of the music that I make is has a lot of complexity to it, and the drumming being a feature means that you want to highlight those things. Yeah. Again, going back to Rush, you've got a power trio. A trio, first of all, just enables everybody to be very identifiable in those roles, but also everybody's got to fill the proper amount of space. That's why I think like the trio is still kind of like my favorite format, because the individuality of players, and everybody has to lean on each other, because when one guy's soloing, the other two people have got to support that, and you kind of go around. And but they obviously carved out the space for this incredible drummer that they had. Like you wouldn't be listening to a Rush song that didn't have that focus
Yeah.
on that thing. But the brilliance of Neil too is that because he was the lyricist, he was a next level arranger for the drums, because he was also following the vocal, because he wrote the lyrics and he knew what he wanted the drums to do on certain accents, certain lines.
Yeah, those accents. And that's what I'm thinking about, like those hits.
Yeah.
And certain songs. I mean, so tight, so
Yeah.
clean.
Yeah, so it's the brilliance of how he saw his role in that.
He'd a lot of time like lead a fill into that hit or out of that hit.
Yeah.
You know, and that way it wasn't going over the vocals, but it had its little, ooh, that was nice.
Yeah. It's like perfectly placed for when the vocals aren't there, and you get this great fill. And so I love the arrangement aspect of making music.
Yeah. Another drummer I've recently liked is, I'm not sure if you're familiar with like Greta Van Fleet. Danny Wagner is their drummer. And he's originally a guitarist. And his kind of story was that he wanted to join the jazz band, but they already had a guitarist, needed a drummer, started playing drums. And he locks in with the guitarist so well in these solos. And I've been able to kind of feel some of that playing with Joe Kohler, because he's very percussive.
Right.
Extremely.
So when he gets into a solo and I'm playing the drums, it's like, whoa, you know, and finding those little pockets.
I think of the song "Trip to Light" fantastic. I mean, that's a perfect example of the drums and guitars being so in sync with those abrupt stops within that song. Like, they are just on it.
Yeah, it's like a weird. It doesn't like stop on the one.
No,
like
it's
one
very
end,
weird. It
Right.
stops in very weird places, and they're just on it every single time. And it's a live recording. It's one recording all the way through. The one that I'm thinking of, it's so good.
Yeah, when I'm thinking about phrasing, actually, as a guitar player, like in a jam situation or something, I am very much influenced by by drums and just by percussive thinking of different fills almost as a part of the phrasing of what I'm doing.
Dave Grohl as well.
Yeah. But like when I used to play with Jim Rosati a lot, that was the first drummer that I think I had that sort of ultra connection to, because he was his ears were he just listened so to everything, and he was able to essentially like play lead drums but without it ever really sounding like it was busy, because it was always just flowing. And because he had this jazz touch and that sense of improvisation, but I always knew, like, if I got going on something, that by the end of that measure we were going to connect it with the two of us, and that was just so fun. And I have that with Jeff too, which is like sometimes we'll just jam bass and drums, and he'll say it's like we've been playing together for years. It just
sounds like it.
It's like it's just something that you just get.
Yeah.
One another. So yeah, I totally know what you're saying. And people like to rip on Lars from Metallica, but like
So much smoke.
yeah, it's ridiculous. But people don't realize like the sound of that band is his drums and James Hetfield's rhythm guitar playing. You take those two guys out of the equation, you don't have that band. So it's that push and pull of that connection that makes that music work in particular.
Yeah, or like Uncle Stu Copeland. I mean, like there's times where he's not playing at all during a song, during certain parts, and then the next thing you know, he's like, sounds like an octopus is playing the drums.
Yeah.
It's like, what?
Love Stuart Copeland.
Yeah, that's freaking Lars. Yeah, I never really thought about it like that with how those two are meshing up in there.
So I want to ask you a question, actually, if you don't mind, which centers around just the area that we come from, that we live in, that we you guys being out making music and stuff, and you're playing in two bands that make original music. What do you feel are, I don't even know the question I want to ask, but what are your aims as a musician in terms of like where you see yourself going, because there's the career aspect, and then there's just the emotional personal fulfillment of playing music. How do you feel about all of that, like where you're at in your life right now and the projects you're involved in?
Yeah. As far as fulfillment goes, I feel so fulfilled.
Yeah.
I mean, especially now that, working a 9 to 5, that the money aspect of it isn't so important.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm really enjoying it, and I feel fulfilled in any gig and any opportunity I get to play, whether it's playing. I get to play Grassroots in Chicory Hills last week, and then now today playing at the Vestal Coal House. I'm just as grateful.
Yeah.
When it comes to a career and where I want to go, I don't know if I see myself as like a full-time drummer.
Right.
Right now, I can see myself being more of an asset to the music community as somebody that is promoting shows,
Mm-hmm.
maybe booking shows, and more in this space. And it's not that I don't like it. I love playing drums, but it's also the career aspect. I'm in a very pivotal point. Not only just being like a young father and husband, but I feel like I'm going to graduate, that kind of graduation situation where the company I currently work for kind of where things are going is only going to go so far.
Sure.
And it's either, just go to the next company, which is like going to a different school, or taking this on full time. Music, whether it's playing with bands, doing more sessions and more interviews. So this year really is trying to stack up a lot more work, so that way maybe by this time next year I'm not so much into this corporate lifestyle anymore, and I'm fulfilling some of the passions and doing the things I love with the people I love,
Great.
And playing with 2 original bands is tough. I was way in over my head when I first started. I joined Caviar and Grits in 2019.
Mm-hmm.
And at the time we were just building getting our music together, learning all the songs, and that way we can start gigging probably in the next couple months. But in the meantime, there was this offer to play with Kid Bess because she also needed a drummer. And what had happened was it was the opposite. She had gigs ready to go. And I didn't realize how tough it was going to be to learn all of this material for 2 different bands, not just like cover bands. These are original bands.
Right.
And with that, I kind of had to let her know, hey, I'm so grateful for this opportunity and I love working with you, but I made a commitment for this one band and I'm going to stick with that, and maybe if I'm in a place later I could come back. And around 2021, Bess and I started playing again together in a very broken down way. Like I would just come out with a cajon, she was on the guitar, Jeff McCauley would play cello, so it was a bit more acoustic. And then from there, I was able to build up, get back on the kit with her, and then work together and arrange these songs. And to me, it's so much better than playing in a cover band.
Right.
I mean, I to be able to help somebody with, creating their vision along with your creative input, and that's where I feel so fulfilled.
That's
playing
great.
with these 2 bands, so much fun. Yeah.
That's kind of how my mindset was with Junkyard Heights, where it's I loved the original tunes that we were making more than anything. That's what I wanted to play, and that's what they wanted to play too. But it's hard because you can't get an actual booking all the time, especially around here, which is kind of what we were talking about beforehand.
Off mic. Yeah.
Yeah.
No, and but I think it's it's a relevant thing to talk about, and because it gets back to what you said a couple minutes ago. And if you need to finish, I don't want to cut you off.
Oh no, you're fine.
Which is trying to do something, within and for the community, both the community at large and specifically the music community. because I think, obviously when you have a thriving arts community, that is always good for an area. And I often wonder how this area could gain more positive art culture, and specifically places for original music that aren't just bars and establishments who are saying, yeah, sure, you can play your stuff here. More like, we want to highlight that that's what it's about, which is about original music. And certainly if I had the means to do it, I'd want to open my own place or be a part of it or something. But there's a real need for that, I think.
I think there's a lot of things that you can do. Just being involved a little bit more, just in any sort of way, such as you going onto the board for Porch Fest, like just doing even small things like that, having your voice be heard. I know you can join the Arts Council. They accept applications like that, which is something I'd really like to do, because I don't really know if they have anyone that's super local music focused, and especially original music. It's art. Yeah. That is our art. That's quite literally Binghamton art. There's no reason why there shouldn't be a loud voice inside of that organization that is trying to do more and more things. Whether or not it'd be like we had talked with Chris, like, are there grant opportunities out and stuff like that? That's all stuff that they know how to do, that they could be trying to help facilitate it towards local music, for sure. There's so many things. It's just making that step to actually do it. I think, at least from what I've heard, I don't want to sound too much of like a jerk or anything like that, but there's a lot of people who say it should be this way and then don't make a single move on how they can be an impact themselves.
Yeah, I think we all have the passion. We just don't know we don't all know the jargon, and that's where it gets sticky, and especially for us musicians, like we don't want to deal.
Don't want to deal with it. You just wish it was there.
But if we collectively started to, like you said, echo in those rooms, and
be loud.
Yeah, and actually go like, this is what's going on with the music community right now. We are musicians.
Let me tell you something.
Right.
Listen,
back in my day.
You listen right here now.
No, I mean, listen. Running a venue is difficult. There's no doubt about it. It's just that it's always been a tough sell to have a space for original music, and of course we've had places like the Cyber Cafe come and go, and when that place, it took me a while to actually realize, because I used to do stuff there as well. I wasn't like a part of the sort of regular thing there, but I did enough things there to recognize that when Jeff Kahn passed away, that was a space that really allowed for just so much open-ended creativity and for people to take
a hit to the community.
Chances, and that's really lacking now, because they're just, I mean, should mention like the North Brewery is doing stuff. The Bundy has some options. Atomic Tom's. So there are things. I don't want to get the impression or give the impression that there isn't, but I still think I'm almost like, I'm confused how we don't have at least one really obvious place where original music is always happening, based on even just the college environment. It's kind of crazy. Most college towns, you would expect that to be a thing, but
like the colleges are putting on their own festivals. They have that the Mo Fest. That they did recently, and
a little really cool impromptu like home stuff they'll do. I mean, they do a lot of stuff. I just don't think that we as a community have provided a space for them to even use.
So that's the thing.
It's tough. I think that there's a couple tough things with this area that I was kind of realizing recently, that we have these certain spaces, but they're pretty spread out. I mean, I know it's not huge, but even from the North Brew to Atomic Tom's, what is that, like a 20-minute drive?
Sure.
And that could be kind of tough for some people, where it would be nice to see a little bit more of those places kind of closer together. But in the mix of that, where we would like to see it is how can we help those bars that are already having music maybe change a little bit, add some lighting, maybe put in a stage,
right.
and you will see more community support, more bands going into those places.
It's always an afterthought. Music is always an afterthought with a bar. It doesn't.
Well, yeah, because you're there to sell drinks.
Yeah. There isn't an actual place with, like, I think Dos Rios would be a perfect spot. Like, it's essentially built. It's ready to go. There's tons of bathrooms. There's a place for a stage. There's tons and tons of space. An awesome bar. Why there couldn't be a huge venue there that would be packed with college kids, and you could, I mean, have the cover bands come in and do all that, but I guarantee you could get big acts to come down there and play shows.
Yeah.
It's a cool looking space.
It's awesome. Yeah. It's just having someone, I guess, folk over the money, basically, is what it is to do it.
Yeah, we did like an open mic kind of pop up at a barbershop.
Yeah, that was fun.
Dapper
that
Rascal.
was fun.
And I mean, Ava that runs it reached out to us and was so nice and so accommodating, moving things around, getting the area cleaned up, and making music the focal point. You know? And even though it was after hours, still it was just nice to go into a place and not have to worry about like all these loud TVs that are on and the, you know, being away from the music, where it's like, we're here for this.
Is that not one of your biggest pet peeves? Playing at a bar and having a TV on behind you?
Oh yeah, it's the worst.
Oh my god.
It's why I pretty much choose to not do it anymore.
We played at Tioga
that's
Downs, and they have
years.
that 150-inch giant projection right next to him. I'm just like, why did you build this stage here? Like, why? If you need to have that TV on, why are you paying for?
But that's what I'm saying. It's having venues that. That's not even a thing, you know. Which I should plug my upcoming show.
Yes, that's part of this.
Which is Wednesday, May 24th at Atomic Tons in Binghamton.
Perfect. It'll be out.
Yes.
It'll be out ready to run.
And so I'm doing a solo show there. I might have some guests like Jeff or something come down, and maybe we'll do some improv stuff. But it'll mostly be solo, and I have Hunter Davidson opening with his Underground River.
I saw. Yes. That's.
I think he's probably just doing it solo or duo. I'm not sure what his configuration is.
We got to see Underground River a few weeks back.
Yeah, so
super
good.
Cool. They're
Lots
all like,
of fun.
They're all vintaged out.
Yeah. So I think it's going to be a really good night. Doors are at 7:30.
7:30.
No, I'm sorry. Doors are at 7. Hunter's on at 7:30. I'll be on at like 8:15. And tickets, you can get them online or just day of, and it's $15.
Awesome.
Sweet.
Yeah, we'll definitely link that in the description as well.
Great.
Of course.
You can see that information.
Great. Is there anything else that you want to plug? Anything coming up?
Any other shows?
Sponsors?
No,
Nothing?
I don't think so. I mean, I'm just I'm working on solo stuff right now, and also this project I have with Marco Miniman, who's an amazing drummer and composer. We have a project called McStine and Miniman. We're working on our third record. And then I'm going to be out this summer touring with Porcupine Tree in Europe. So I'm leaving basically in a month.
Awesome. That's going to be a lot of fun, I bet.
Oh, yeah. Amazing. We're playing like these really big festivals and stuff.
I got to ask you, you hit the gym? You're solid, dude. Like, it can't just be guitar.
I do, I try to
lifting up those amps and stuff.
Yeah, exactly. I try to be consistent with it.
You have too much sleeves on right now. You obviously didn't get the memo here.
I know. Yeah. I was timid. I try to stay in shape, especially when I'm on the road.
Yeah,
that's tough
because it is hard. But thankfully, in this current touring situation, we're traveling pretty comfortably, and the hotels and stuff tend to have a fitness room, so there's enough time and space to do something.
Great.
So yeah, obviously, I mean, especially when you have something, well, at any level, but at a level where you're really expected to deliver.
Yeah.
Personal health is everything. I mean, you can't go out there and not be. I mean, obviously, rock and roll history is filled with the tales of craziness, but but it's not recommended.
No, and you see some of those guys that are just, they're really trying to hang on right now, and it's not the same show. You see them up there struggling, like you almost feel bad. You're just like, damn.
Yeah.
Your body is so important, and I just feel like people get complacent and then start eating. And we kind of talked about this with we did a short little podcast before, but that's enough of that. But we were just kind of talking about eating habits, and it's really hard. Like when I even when I'm driving out to Utah, and I'm for my skiing stuff that I do, it's hard to eat right. It's really hard, and it's like I'm driving for days and days and days at the same time, and it's really difficult. So being a traveling musician is got to be exact same.
Talking about Hunter, we went to the city, played a show with Kid Bess, and he was doing sound for us.
Oh, cool.
And we played at this event, and it was funny. We didn't even know it, but we were both intermittent fasting. So we hadn't eaten in for both of us, 20 hours, right?
Yeah.
So we're like, oh man, we're doing good. We're feeling good. We get down to this banquet. It was for the New York State Bar Association. So it's a really nice event. And they bring out so much food. We went nuts.
Just devouring everything
in
sight.
We went to every little station. I mean, the first thing that came out, though, was dessert. I remember Hunter got this big cookie and a thing of chocolate milk. I'm like, dude, you know how to break a fast.
Yeah, no kidding. Yeah. Get it started.
Yeah.
Well, cool. Yeah. Are we gonna wrap it up? And
yeah, I'm good with that.
Till next time.
Yeah, thanks for having me. It was really fun.
Yeah, thank you so much. Really appreciate it. I'm so pumped to get this thing out. It's going to sound great. We'll make sure of it.
Awesome.
Thanks, guys.
Yeah, thanks so much for coming out.
Take care, man.
Yeah.
All right, that's a wrap.
Cool.